Over 4,000 federal workers just lost their jobs. Is this the start of a government collapse or a political power move? Watch now to find out the truth behind the Trump layoffs. Remember to like and subscribe for more Money Smart Basics videos. If you have any suggestions for financial literacy topics, please leave a comment. Stay until the end to receive a bonus tip. A government shutdown is more than just a political event. It's a moment when the machinery of the federal government grinds to a halt, and the effects ripple far beyond the halls of power. This happens when Congress fails to pass the necessary funding bills to keep federal agencies operating, leaving critical decisions in limbo and millions of Americans in uncertainty. The consequences of this political standoff are immediate and deeply personal for hundreds of thousands of federal workers and their families, who suddenly find themselves caught in the crossfire of partisan gridlock. On October 4, 2025, a heated budget dispute between the White House and Congress escalated, triggering a partial government shutdown that sent shockwaves through the nation. Non-essential government services came to a standstill, iconic national parks closed their gates to visitors, passport and visa processing slowed to a crawl, and countless public programs were put on hold. Federal offices across the country locked their doors, leaving citizens without access to vital services and information. About 750,000 federal employees, nearly 40% of the government workforce, were abruptly furloughed without pay, facing the anxiety of missed paychecks and mounting bills. Meanwhile, essential workers like air traffic controllers and border patrol agents were required to keep working, but without pay, adding layers of stress and uncertainty to already demanding jobs. For these families, mortgages, rent, and daily expenses didn't pause. Many were forced to dip into savings, borrow from friends, or seek community aid just to make ends meet. The shutdown's impact didn't stop with government workers. Local businesses near federal buildings, cafes, dry cleaners, and shops saw their customer base vanish overnight, leading to sharp declines in revenue and fears of permanent closure. Private sector employees whose jobs depend on federal contracts or clients faced reduced hours, furloughs, or even layoffs as projects stalled and payments were delayed. What began as a political dispute in Washington quickly cascaded into economic hardship for communities across the country, affecting not just government workers but also small businesses, contractors, and families everywhere. The human cost of the shutdown was immediate, widespread, and deeply personal, felt in empty paychecks, shuttered storefronts, and the worried faces of families wondering how long the standoff would last. By the 10th day of the government shutdown, tensions in Washington had reached a breaking point. The Trump administration, facing mounting pressure and a growing sense of urgency, made a move that stunned both political observers and federal employees alike. For the first time in recent memory, the administration authorized permanent layoffs, known in government terms as reductions in force, or RIFs. This was a dramatic escalation from the usual protocol. Traditionally, government shutdowns resulted in furloughs, temporary, unpaid leaves of absence. Workers would anxiously await the end of the impasse, but their jobs were typically restored once funding resumed. This time, however, the rules changed dramatically. The threat was no longer just about missed paychecks, but about the very real possibility of losing a career in public service. The announcement sent shockwaves through the federal workforce. Employees who had weathered previous shutdowns now faced a new, more frightening reality: permanent unemployment. The sense of security that once came with a government job was suddenly shattered. Russell Vought, the acting director of the Office of Management and Budget, publicly defended the decision. He argued that these layoffs were necessary for government efficiency and aligned with the administration's broader goal of shrinking the federal workforce. Agencies across Washington were instructed to identify positions for elimination, using the shutdown as an opportunity to downsize and restructure. Managers faced difficult choices, and uncertainty rippled through every department. Employee unions and government watchdog groups quickly condemned the move. They called it a dangerous overreach, accusing the administration of using federal workers as pawns in a larger political battle. The administration's strategy was clear: use the shutdown not just as a temporary pause in operations, but as a tool for lasting, structural change within the federal government. For thousands of federal workers and their families, the stakes had never been higher. The fear of losing not just a paycheck but a livelihood cast a long shadow over the nation's capital. A reduction in force, or RIF, is the federal government's formal process for layoffs triggered by lack of work, funds, or reorganization. Unlike firings, RIFs follow strict rules based on tenure, veteran status, and performance. What made this shutdown unique was the timing. RIF notices were issued during the funding lapse, starting a 30-day countdown to potential job loss. For thousands, a furlough became a prelude to permanent unemployment. Layoff notices are formal, often devastating, and set off a scramble for limited options, like bumping less senior colleagues or retreating to old roles. Navigating this process was even harder with HR staff furloughed. Over 4,000 workers received these notices, compounding financial and psychological stress. For many, it meant the abrupt end of a career in public service. The shutdown's impact was no longer temporary. It threatened to reshape lives permanently. Court documents soon revealed the scope of the layoffs: 4,600 employees across 7 major agencies. The Department of the Treasury faced the largest cuts, over 1,400 employees, raising concerns about tax collection and financial management. The Department of Health and Human Services was next, with up to 1,200 targeted, threatening public health programs. Other agencies hit included education, housing and urban development, commerce, the EPA, and energy. Critics warned these cuts would disrupt essential services and public safety. The layoffs were broad, deliberate, and signaled a sweeping effort to shrink government. The impact was felt across nearly every sector of federal service. The message was clear: no department was immune. Behind the stark statistics and headlines were thousands of deeply personal stories, lives upended, dreams put on hold, and families thrown into uncertainty by the shutdown and sweeping layoffs. For many federal workers, the crisis was not just about numbers, but about the sudden loss of security and purpose that had defined their careers. One Department of Education employee described the moment she received her reduction in force notice as the floor dropping out from under me. She had devoted years to her work, only to find her future erased in a single envelope. The shock and disbelief rippled through offices across the country. At the Treasury Department, a worker and new homeowner faced the terrifying prospect of losing both his job and his house. He had just achieved a lifelong dream, only to see it threatened overnight. The fear of not being able to provide for his family weighed heavily as bills piled up and uncertainty grew. Across the nation, families scrambled to cut expenses, cancel plans, and survive without paychecks. Parents worried about putting food on the table and keeping the lights on. Some dipped into savings meant for college or retirement, while others turned to food banks for the first time. The psychological toll was immense. Many felt betrayed after years, sometimes decades of public service. The sense of pride in their work was replaced by anxiety, anger, and a deep sense of loss. Coworkers leaned on each other for support, but morale was at an all-time low. An EPA scientist summed up the heartbreak: "I dedicated my career to protecting public health, and now I'm told my work isn't valuable enough to keep." For scientists, analysts, and countless others, the shutdown felt like a rejection of their mission and values. Even those who kept their jobs felt the chill. The fear of being next lingered in every hallway, and the camaraderie that once defined federal offices was replaced by tension and uncertainty. Trust in leadership eroded, and the future felt more fragile than ever. The shutdown shattered the sense of stability that once defined federal employment. What was once seen as a safe, reliable career path now seemed unpredictable and risky. The crisis left a lasting scar on the workforce and cast a long shadow over the future of public service. Many questioned whether their sacrifices had been worth it, and whether they could ever trust the system again. The message was clear: government jobs were no longer the safe haven they once were. The impact would be felt for years to come, as fewer people considered public service, and those who remained wondered what the next crisis might bring. Federal employee unions quickly challenged the layoffs in court, arguing that using a temporary shutdown to justify permanent RIFs was unlawful. They sought a restraining order, claiming irreparable harm to workers and public services. The administration countered that the president had authority to manage staffing during a funding crisis. The legal battle put the courts in the spotlight, testing the limits of executive power during a shutdown. As the case dragged on, thousands of workers remained in limbo. The layoffs ignited a fierce political battle in Washington. Democrats condemned the move as cruel, accusing the administration of using workers as bargaining chips. They insisted any funding deal must protect social programs and reverse cuts. Republicans defended the layoffs as a necessary response to the budget impasse, blaming Democrats for refusing to negotiate. President Trump amplified the blame game, accusing the opposition of obstructing government functions. The standoff deepened partisan divides, prolonging uncertainty for federal workers. In the end, political brinkmanship left real people caught in the crossfire. The layoffs were part of a broader Trump administration goal to shrink the federal government. The shutdown provided a chance to accelerate workforce reductions already in the works. Agencies had been preparing RIF plans, targeting programs not aligned with the president's priorities. The administration used the crisis to justify deep cuts, bypassing normal legislative hurdles. Federal employment had already dropped by nearly 200,000 in recent years through hiring freezes and attrition. President Trump made clear he wanted these reductions to be permanent, not temporary. The shutdown became a tool for enacting a long-standing ideological agenda. Issuing layoff notices during a shutdown marked a turning point for federal employment. The promise of job security in public service was shattered, making government work less attractive to top talent. The risk of sudden layoffs could drive skilled professionals away, weakening the government's ability to serve the public. Fewer, less experienced workers means slower services and weaker protections for citizens. The push for a smaller government risks hollowing out vital institutions. The long-term impact will be measured in lost expertise, morale, and public trust. The future of public service, and the services Americans rely on, has never been more uncertain. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. With that, you are ahead of 90% of most people in America. Here is the bonus tip that we promised. Don't wait for headlines to affect your livelihood. Review your emergency fund, update your resume, and explore alternative income streams now. Preparation today can protect you from unexpected layoffs tomorrow.
The information provided in this content is for educational and informational purposes only, and should not be considered financial, legal, or tax advice. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, or legal counsel before making any financial decisions. The creator of this content is not responsible for any actions taken based on the information provided. Investments and financial decisions carry risk, and past performance does not guarantee future results.